and welcome to this masterclass on how to use pens for producing artworks. So I just want to talk you through, before we start actually thinking about textures and actually composing a picture and finishing it, I want to talk you through pens and the different types and where you can buy them and all that sort of thing. I've got so many pens, from basic markers that you would buy for children from cheap shops and WH Smiths and Tesco's and places like that. They're perfectly good. Unfortunately, these are not disposable, so you have to throw them away at the end, which isn't great for the environment. So the less of these we can buy, the better, really. I tend to use this sort of pen, use all the ink up, and then I take the insides out and I put them in a yogurt pot full of water. And what happens is it drains off any ink that hasn't come out while using into the water, and it creates an inky watercolour almost that you can use for painting. So that's one thing you can do with them. The other thing is you can use the plastic section, and I've used them for marking, labelling plants. I get a black marker and I write the name on here and I use them as labels for my plants. And I've seen them used for curtains to hang in between a space, so on a door, so a door curtain. You can just put strings through them and hang them up. That's another use. Look online, there's lots of uses for these pens rather than throwing them into landfill. And then I've got lots of different pens, some of which are refillable, some of them which aren't, some of them which are recyclable as well. So really look hard at what you're buying and be careful. So these ones are really good. These are Copic pens and they have two sides to them. Okay, so one side is like a brush pen. This is called a brush pen. Okay, it has like a brush on the end. And then the other side is normally a sort of a shape pen, they call it. Okay, and this is a medium broad pen. And it has the same colour on either side, but it's useful because it has two nibs. I've got lots of those, they're really good. And a lot of the watercolour pens that you get these days are like those, they have the brush on the end. I've got these Sadler marker pens, and they're great because the colour is really intense and they last a long time, which is another thing. The sort of the better the brand, the longer they last, whereas these things tend to run out quite quickly. Okay. What else I've got? I use barrel pens. They come with different size nibs. This is a fine one. These are great. They last a long time too. That's another barrel, but it's an italic pen. It has a shaped nib on the end. Okay. All of these you can buy online, but you can buy from your normal shops. I have normal pens as well. This is a Papermate pen. I use this a lot for drawing. It's just a ballpoint, but it's really good because it's permanent. The other thing you've got to think about when buying pens is whether they're permanent or not. If you're going to, especially if you're going to use them with paint, so for example with watercolour, test them and just put some water over the top and see if they run. And if they don't, then that's great. You can use them at any time on your painting. But if they do, just use the pen after you've done the painting. Okay. What else? Right, so I've got Sharpies. I love Sharpies. Permanent markers, remember, they're not going to come off anything. If you get them on your hands, on your clothes, whatever, very difficult to get off. Come with a nice fine tip on them, nice and strong, last a long time. But again, not recyclable. So you have to then think of something to do with them once you've finished with them. These are my favourites, absolute favourites. Posca pens. These are great because you can get refills, you can get new nibs, because the nibs, especially if you use them a lot, they pull out, but they get damaged if you use them a lot. So you can buy the nibs separately, and they come in all sorts of jumbo sizes, down to really fine liners. I use this one a lot. This is a white fine liner, and it's a 1mm size, and I use this a lot for watercolours. So if I lose my whites in my watercolour, that's what I'll use. So if I'm painting a ship and the ropes have got lost in the sky, then this is great for getting your whites back. Okay, this is acrylic paint though. Once it's on, it's not coming off. Okay, so make sure you've got the right mark before you put the pen on. Same with the Sharpies, they're permanent. And then you've got all sorts of different marker pens. So I've got these permanent black markers, you've got metallic markers, they're really great. Again, they come in different sizes. There are other acrylic pens on the market. These are really good as well. They're called On the Run acrylic markers, and you can see the paint inside them. You can see it's separated a little bit, but all you have to do is shake them and then it mixes up again. Okay, same with these ones. They have a little ball inside to remix the paint if you haven't used them for a while. Okay, I think that's more or less it. I mean, the most important thing is to find out if your pen is permanent or water mixable. Also the colours. Think about the colours that you're going to need. If you buy a set, often you'll have a load of pens loads of colours that you'll never use. So if you can get to a point where you can actually start buying individual colours that you want separately, that's a good idea. You can do this with these Posca pens, and often if you go to certain sites or shops, like my local art shop, they do a 3 for 2 offer on these pens. So I'm always getting them from there because they're cheap, and they do last a long time, and they are very good quality when you use them. The surface coverage is excellent. So again, that's another thing. So you basically just have to try a few different types out, and you find the ones that you enjoy using the most, and sort of settle with those, you know. I mean, like I said, I keep getting given pens, and my daughter buys them and decides she doesn't like them, so she gives them to me and I like them. So everybody's got their different flavour. Okay, hope that's helped. If you've got any questions, then just ask me further. If you've got any specific pens and you think what are these, I don't know what they are for, like these ones, these high glow pens, they're actually for glass, but there's no reason why you couldn't use them on paper, you know what I mean? The only thing with these types of pens, like metallic pens and things like that, is you've got to be careful what you've got underneath your work, because they do go through and out the other side. So some strong markers, like Sharpies, they go through a piece of paper. So make sure that you've got something underneath so it doesn't stain your workbench or the piece of paper that's underneath. Okay, so next we're going to talk about textures, how to create textures, and then we'll do a final piece, which will be Tenby, a lovely view of Tenby in South Wales, just in case you're not from Wales and you don't know where Tenby is. We're going to do a scene from Tenby in pen. Okay, see you later. Okay, so the next thing to do is to draw this scene out. Now, if you haven't done much drawing of buildings and perspective for a while, then I suggest you draw onto a scrap bit of paper so you can make all your mistakes and figure things out, and then you can transfer it onto a finished piece of paper ready for your pen. Okay, a decent piece of paper, maybe some nice cartridge paper. This is just photocopying paper that I'm using here. Like I said, mainly because I just want to get everything right, and then I can just trace it through, either using tracing paper, or you can just put pencil on the back and draw it through. Okay, so the first thing I would do is just put the horizon in, and it's important that you get your horizon straight. So if you can't get your horizon straight, measure down here and here and use a ruler and just, you know, get it straight, because obviously if it's slightly down on one side, it will look like it's falling off the paper. Okay, and then it's just a matter of looking at the image and measuring. So this is another picture of Tenby here, but you can just sort of measure with your pencil, going up and down like this with your finger. So that length of houses there goes from the tip of the pencil to this end of the pencil, and then you can just transfer that onto your picture. So I'm looking at the image. I haven't got the image in front of me, but I've got it on my computer, and I'm going to look at it, and I can see that these houses here are about this length. So the ones that are on the brow of the hill here, the top of the house comes up almost onto the horizon. Okay, and it's about that tall. Now these are front onto us, so there's very little perspective there, but don't have them too deep. Okay, make sure you get that size there right. And then what happens is, this is the top of a sea wall, so it comes all the way down, and then it goes down in a curve like this, and then it goes out onto the harbour. So I'm just going to draw in this little curve here like that. Okay, and that actually comes down. Oh, sorry, I've done that wrong there. See, so I've done that wrong already. So the line goes here, the top of the wall goes there, and that goes down, and then it goes a little wider at this end than it is at this end. So there's the sea wall, and it would run behind, but we've got all these little houses in front. So you've got like two strips there, and then there's a roof, and that roof follows the line of the top of the wall there. So we've got a beachfront, probably some kind of boathouse there, and then we've got another roof coming down, and this curves around slightly. So I'm just building this side up, because this bit here, like I said, is actually facing us, so we can't see any real perspective there. So we've just got to build up those little houses bit by bit, trying to get them more or less the right width. I mean, you know, if you're out slightly, it doesn't matter, but just make sure that they follow. And if you want to add extra houses on the end, then do that. And there is a building just behind, so it's gone 1, 2, 3, 4, and just behind here there's another building just sticking up the top of that area there and going along, and actually falls in with the roof on this property. In fact, it probably is the roof of that property. Anyway, right, okay, so there we go, in there like that. And then there's another building that comes up here, just rising above the horizon. Okay, so that's for buildings that are facing you. And then obviously you can go in and put all your windows in, but that'll come later. We have the same going on here. There's not a great deal of perspective, but the houses are getting smaller as they go towards here. So again, just look at how high are those houses. They're about that high, and then the curve joins to there like that. So it's going down ever so slightly, And then we've got roofs that on this one they go, there's one, two, three-ish houses. So the roof goes all the way along there, and then it dips down a touch to finish off that block where there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, and again, please don't worry about getting things absolutely spot on. It really doesn't matter a huge amount. What does matter is that you don't make these houses too big. Get them the right size in the landscape that they're sitting in. So this is the harbour. We've got a little boathouse here again. We've got a bit of perspective on that because that's going away from you. So that line there would be longer than this line here. So just give it, just narrow it as it goes along that line. Single point perspective. I do have other tutorials on my YouTube channel which talk a bit more about perspective, so if you want to go and have a look at those, you can. So we've got a little bit of beach coming here, and then we've got a wall coming down, and then another harbour wall here, and this is where this building kicks in. So we've actually, this here is the roof of that. So we've got that little building coming down which joins up with that, and then you've got foliage going around the side of that and up and so on. So just slowly build your little landscape up. It's not too bad, this, because it has very little perspective in it, so you will find that you find it okay to draw. It only becomes more now that bit there is the sea, okay, it only becomes more complicated when you can see more angles on your buildings, and on this one fortunately there is not that many angles. This bit here is part of the museum and the castle there, and also there's a hill here, and there's a little bit of extra castle there, and then over here we've got a little bit of land coming down from that mound there, and then we've got the lifeboat station, which is brand new, beautifully painted in red, and really provides a lovely focal point for that area. Okay, so get your drawing done, build it up slowly, make your mistakes on a scrap piece of paper. Don't bother with the boats because those are the sort of things that we'll put in afterwards. So we're just looking at the land, the sea, the sky and the buildings at the moment. Make all your mistakes, and then what you can do is if you turn it over and you can just rub pencil over the back like this. This is if you haven't got tracing paper. If you're used to using tracing paper or even the grid method, then you can use this. So let's just overturn this picture. So I've got my picture finished here. I've gone over the back with pencil. I'm going to just turn it over, and then literally all you have to do is take, I use a ballpoint pen. Have I got one? Let me just get a ballpoint pen. There. And the reason why I use a ballpoint pen is because it's got quite a fine tip on it, and you can press quite hard using the pen. So if you check, I normally stick it down, excuse me, stick it down so it doesn't move with a piece of tape, and then go over my lines, and then you'll see that it comes through on the other side. You can't really see that very well because I've got a really thin piece of paper, but I'm hoping that you can see these lines here that have come through. Okay, the more pencil you put on here, the better, and also the softer the pencil that you use. So if you use like a 2B or a 3B or a 4B pencil, then that will help transfer that image. Otherwise you can just use tracing paper or even trace down paper, or the grid method where you put the lines on and then you transfer each individual square. Okay, good luck with that. The next stage you'll see where I will start to apply pen, and I'm going to do that in time lapse so that you can see it building up. Okay, and then I will talk to you at the end on how to finish it. Okay, good luck. Okay, so here we are, we're at the stage now. You've seen that build up. You can see that I've put several different greens onto the foliage area, and you can do the same with pen, with different shades of blue for your water and things like that. So just use what you've got to build up those, like if there are any shadows coming off this wall, for example, you can just build up some darker tones just underneath. You can use the darker pen to introduce some waves, maybe coming around onto the beach and things like that. Even if your pen is running out like mine is, you can still use just even the most gentlest of marks to add texture and detail to your work. So again, imagine that the sun is coming from the right hand side, so wherever the sun is coming from this side, there would be shadows being cast from the left, from the right to the left, like this. So shadows underneath all the, so even in here, and there's no reason why you couldn't put the blue over the orange to create a shadow in here, because obviously it responds to what's underneath it, so it will create shadows even on top of the green. Can you see how that works? You're just adding blue, but because of the green pigment underneath, it is making a different shade of green, which is really useful to know, because you don't necessarily have all of these colours in your set. So putting certain colours on top of one another really helps to enhance a picture. So along here there would be waves, but also shadow coming off. You could put sort of small marks in the distance and sort of wave marks where there would be some waves coming in to those bays. I've left these edges broken in the sky, because in the sky as well you could also put some different shades of blue. You could even work purple in, or pinks. Just be creative and keep adding to those colours. And you can go into as much detail as you want to with your picture. You might decide that you get to a certain point and you want to leave it alone. So, you know, you make that decision. I've also got different shades of green, so I can use those swirly marks in the foreground to create texture or even dots. But in the distance, you wouldn't necessarily see that sort of texture. On the rocks, on the harbour wall, you could take an orange and just dot in some. You might not be able to see this on camera, but you can see the slight variations in colour there, which will just help create that feeling of stone. What else? Okay, so I have these Copic markers which give you sort of pale shades, which is what I use for these buildings here. If you don't have them, then you might have to use your brighter colours. But you know, Tenby is full of brightly coloured houses, so don't worry about using colours that are not necessarily true to what you're looking at. Just be creative. Okay, just going to put a little bit more colour there. You can also take a black fine liner or something dark and just add in some extra darkness. But if you can avoid putting in too much line, then it's always better, okay? Mainly because it ends up looking like a children's drawing if you end up sort of outlining things and putting too much detail into things, you know. So just less is more. Don't go around outlining all your buildings and things like that. It just ends up looking a bit rubbish. Okay. One thing, just let me get a marker. I did talk about these Posca pens. So this is a size 0.7mm fine liner Uni Posca white. Okay, I'll just get it going. You have to shake it and then you have to sort of press it to get it going nicely. I'm just going to shake it a bit more. And what this will do is, if you've got some waves on your picture that you want to restore, or even clouds in the sky, then you can, let's see if it works. Yeah, so you can just put back in white marks. Can you see that? Very fine, but it might just give you those little extra marks that you're after. Let me just thicken that up. I don't think it's shaken enough. Yeah, there we go. So you can see those lines now. And these houses, if they're white and you want them to remain white and you've lost them, then you can go back in and just put in some white marks. You can do this with normal white pens, or you can do it even with paint if you wanted to. But it's quite nice just to have some waves coming in just into that harbour, and maybe even some twinkly marks just in the distance. But again, don't overdo it. Okay, so I will take a picture of this and you can print it off if you want to follow it or whatever. Oh, the other thing is, if you've got whites and you've got white window frames, then you can sort of go round. I don't know whether these are white, I didn't look at the image. But you know, if you've got white window frames or even masts. Oh, and the other thing is, if you want to put boats in your harbour, you can put a little boat in there. Let me just shake it again. I'm just wondering if I've got, yeah. So you can just put a little boat. I didn't go for all the boats because I just thought it would be too overwhelming because they're so small. But if you want to pick out the odd one, you can put it back in with a pen, and you can even go round with a different colour maybe. I don't know, no, blue wouldn't work because it's got... So, and you can draw these in pencil first and then go over them rather than attempting to draw the boat in sort of freehand like I'm doing. There we go. And you can put a little mast on it. Let's try. That could be either in black or white. Okay, so if you want to include your boats, then go ahead. But like I said, just remember that you need time and patience for doing boats, especially multiple boats, and you need to get them the right size and so on and so forth. So if you want to just stick to just doing the landscape to begin with, then you can, and maybe the next attempt you can put some boats in, or even some birds in the sky, that sort of thing. No reason why you couldn't put a couple of seagulls up there. Okay, hope you enjoy it, and I'll look forward to seeing your finished results. And like I said, if you've got any questions, don't be frightened to ask. And I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.